Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
When it comes to buying physical gold and silver, Regal Assets is the place to go. Did you know that you can use your existing retirement plan to invest in precious metals and it's 100% tax-free with Regal Assets? I hope you're seriously thinking about using precious metals in your retirement plan to help you beat inflation. It's so simple to use your existing IRA or old 401k to set up your precious metals retirement plan. Request your free investment kit today. It's so helpful and informative that it was recently featured in Forbes and Smart Money Wall Street Journal magazines. Get the latest info by calling toll-free 855-678-6620. That's 855-678-6620. Or visit regalassets.com and use the code LUTZ. You'll save the setup fees and a whole lot more at regalassets.com. You are listening to the FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com. I'm Kerry Lutz on 1230 WBZT. So, tapering, what's it mean? What asset class do you need to be in? Do you diversify? Do you stay diversified? I don't know the answer to that, but Jason Burak seems to, and he's on with us now. Welcome back, Jason.
Thanks, Kerry. I'm glad to be back.
So what asset class is going to be working for you now? The stock market obviously is where you've wanted to be from the beginning of the year. It's up. It looks like it's staying up, judging from the numbers. But if you start believing what Bernanke says he's going to do, the tapering, then might not be the place to be.
Well, it really depends on what industry or sector people are buying. I mean, if they're buying the general stock market, maybe. It really depends on the businesses, though, because if you go look at some master limited partnership types of companies, I mean, these companies are still doing very, very well from a fundamental standpoint, and they've just refinanced a lot of their capital. So they're not borrowing in the short term. A lot of these guys, because of the really cheap interest rates, they've locked in their really, really low borrowing costs, and there's if you study the picture of the American economy, we've had a real lack of energy investment infrastructure into the whole economy literally for decades. And only in the past, I would say 6 or 7 years, has the energy investment infrastructure started to get the capital it deserves. And I think there's still a lot of opportunity there, but that's a sector where there's actually good fundamentals. There's other sectors like the banks and healthcare and real estate investment trusts and the home builders and these guys that are entirely dependent on cheap capital from the Fed and from Congress, from all these government spending programs, and also, cheap capital from the Fed. So it really depends, and this is why people should be diversified, like I was saying before we started recording this interview, is that people, I love commodities. I think they're by far the most undervalued sector. The problem with commodities, especially for people who are just getting started in investing, is the volatility. People are just not disciplined. So, when people learn valuations and asset allocation, they also need to understand hedging strategies and risk management. And these are something that a lot of professionals don't even understand. I deal with a lot of professionals now because I've been getting other paid work. And, people just don't talk about the downside of an investment. They don't keep cash on the sideline. And I think people should always have some cash on the sideline just in case stock you really like that you had bought up and the thing drops. Or you have a hedge in place with options. Because, what people don't realize with options is that if you buy a long position in a stock for a couple $100 more bucks, if on your 100 shares, for only a couple $100 more bucks, unless it's a stock like Apple that's really expensive, you can buy insurance on all your stock, on all your 100 shares of stock. So if the stock goes down, your insurance policy goes up, and you break even. And they never teach this to the average person. They don't teach this to the retail audience, and they really should, because people would say, well, I could buy insurance on my stock, so I would break even at worst. So this is just something that hopefully more professionals understand than retail people. But, if you want to do really good in the stock market, you need to understand diversification, asset allocation, and risk management and hedging tools, as well as learning to keep some cash on the sidelines.
Yeah, and you talk about energy infrastructure not being properly invested in energy production. The power generation, electrical generation, similarly neglected as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. In general, we can't really build any more refineries here in the United States. We can add them on to old existing refineries. You can't build any new ones. The red tape, the EPA mandates, you're looking at many billions of dollars and 20 or 30 years worth of permitting approvals, and the Sierra Club and every single environmentalist fighting it, no matter how good of environmental standards the building is built to. It's just not going to happen. No one's going to wait, 20 or 30 years to build it. This is why no new nuclear power plants are really being built in the United States, except for more than 2 or 3, and why China is going to build, I think, a dozen in 1 year. So this is just the difference here. Not that China is doing a lot of good job with the environment. I think that's something China really needs to work on because they are trying to grow, but I don't think China is doing it smartly. But, you look at the pipelines. The pipelines are starting to get fixed here in the United States. The electrical generation facilities are definitely improving from a standpoint. I mean, we are transitioning away from coal, which is good from an environmental standpoint. We are switching to a little bit cleaner natural gas because of the fracking, although, fracking is not really that environmentally sound. There are issues with fracking, some issues, especially from the water standpoint. So
we could agree to disagree on that. I've investigated on that a lot, and really that one's overblown. But anyway.
Well, what I was just saying, what I meant with the water stuff was that the water gets polluted. So the water gets polluted with actual oil when it comes up. So it's really expensive to clean it all. That's what I meant.
Yeah, they're reclaiming it. There's companies like Ridgeline out there that are making a fortune reclaiming that water, cleaning it up, and reusing it because there's a water shortage at these fracking sites. And they're now treating that water as a resource, and they show the pictures where the water is sitting there and it looks disgusting, but it's a temporary holding facility till they clean the water and they restore the site. So that's what people need to understand, that it is temporarily polluted, but that the water gets reclaimed, most of it, and it's reused.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And I think there's also a lot of really old laws on the books for the water laws that farmers and other energy producers and stuff, that the more water they use, the less money they get charged. And these laws are from the late 1800s and early 1900s.
Yeah.
So obviously they're very backwards right now. We don't have a free market in the water arena. And if we did have a free market, the U.S. consumer, for utilities would be paying a higher price, and then the incentive would be there to clean up all the water. So I think that would solve a lot of the environmental problems with water. It would solve a lot of the problems in China, too. And, I think eventually there's going to be a lot of opportunities for investment in the water sector in the future for some of those companies then once the water price is allowed by the government to be, raised for consumers at the utility level.
Yeah, that is a great point. This archaic regulation never keeps up with the times. And, diversification is a great point, because you never know where that sector that's going to be generating the highest returns, where it's going to be. You have opinions. You might be right. You might be wrong. But a couple of years ago, precious metals was the place to be. And for the past 2 years, it's been like really unfavorable, disfavored sector that's really generated pretty substantial losses.
Exactly. And if the people who have the capital to do so, and they didn't diversify, and they put all their eggs in one basket, and they only bought precious metal stocks, they didn't buy any consumer staple dividend stocks, they didn't buy any master limited partnerships that pay really good dividends, that have continued to pay good dividends, and that sector has actually outperformed. So, with the stock market, the top four sectors in the stock market over this financially engineered bull market by the Federal Reserve and other global central banks has been consumer staple, dividend stocks, healthcare, utilities, and master limited partnerships. So you look at those four sectors and you try to figure out what differentiates them from all the other sectors, and I think it's really simple. It's income. And you look at the one asset that I don't think people should have much exposure to that really does scare me is bonds, and also holding lots and lots of paper fiat currency over the long term. Maybe, in the short term for 12 to 18 months, people can hold a lot of cash or bullion for their liquidity position just until they find like some cash flow real estate to buy, or a dividend stock, or some small cap technology stocks, or some resource stocks they like. But it's really important that people don't put all their eggs in one basket, even though, you and I, Kerry, might really love gold and silver, and we do love gold and silver, but it's just impossible to try to guess the exact timing for when the market's going to turn again and start going back up.
But your thinking is it is going to turn at some point.
Oh, yes. I completely agree. We cannot continue from analyzing all the mining companies and what's going on. Most of the miners are barely surviving right now. Yeah. They're barely surviving right now. And what we're going to see is, I would say this could happen anytime in the next 12 months, but I think everything will be resolved in the next 12 months, because this cannot continue indefinitely, is if the metal price goes much lower for gold and silver, the miners will just turn off supply, and you look at the real supply and demand fundamentals, and demand from Asia is just going nuts. So something has to give there, and it's just amazing, because right now, I've studied for the last many months now, all the miners for gold and silver, and really only First Majestic Silver and Fresnillo, which is a Mexican silver miner and is the world's largest primary silver miner, only those guys out of all the large miners, these are the Heclas, the Pan American Silvers, the Coeur d'Alenes, the Silver Standards, only those two other miners that I said before are actually still earning a profit. The other guys are running their mines right now, their large production levels, at a loss. So obviously, if you have a certain amount of cash as a miner, if you have a couple $100 million cash on the balance sheet, you can afford to run the mine cash flow negative for a couple quarters. And if you have some debt, you can do it for a couple more quarters, and maybe after that you can raise some equity, although your stock price is already down 90%. But eventually, though, this is why I think this is going to get resolved in the next 12 months. You're going to run out of all three of those options, and then you're going to be, you're going to have your oh no moment where we either have to cut production and hoard cash, or we're going to have to sell out or go bankrupt. So I don't see the whole industry doing this, because there is still increases in demand for the actual metal. So I think there are some bullish signs to the industry. We are starting to see some M&A activity on very, very tiny levels. I'm seeing companies like Agnico Eagle and New Gold go in and make some prudent acquisitions. They went in, Kerry, and bought over $100 million worth of gold resource for only $10 million each. These were small deals where the juniors, the management teams were good, the projects were good, and the management teams just said, we can't raise any more capital in this environment, and they just sold out to the larger guys. That normally signals a bottom, and then you look at the commitment of traders where JP Morgan and some of the other bullion banks, which are the commercials and the guys who have been manipulating the price, or one of the main guys, and they finally have covered a lot of their shorts, and they're starting to go long.
It certainly appears that way. It looks like JP Morgan's massive silver short position is gone now, doesn't it?
Yes. Now with the commodity stuff, there's still other people short, but these are the hedge funds. So these are the trend traders. And normally from in the past, whenever the hedge funds and the trend traders were all humongously net short, instead of like JP Morgan, was around 2001 and 2008. And that's right at the bottoms of the gold and silver market before we started to get a large move higher. So I think this could take another couple quarters for everything to get resolved, but maybe we go a little bit lower, but then the supply is going to get turned off, and then we're going to go higher. So all I know, Kerry, is that physical silver is selling for below production costs. My money is where my mouth is, and I just continue to add prudently. And I think people, like I said, it's a great long-term way to preserve the wealth. And there's also other options for people, like with dividend stocks. And I think there's a lot of good small-cap technology stocks out there in legitimate growth sectors that the Federal Reserve is not influencing, like data mining and 3D printing and robotics and things like that.
Hey, great points, Jason. And thanks for coming on the Financial Survival Network. And just give us your website again, where to find you.
Sure. Your listeners can go check out my work at the Main Wall Street for Main Street website, which is WALLSTFRMAINST.com. If they're interested in learning proper risk management, asset allocation, and hedging strategies, and also valuations on dividend stocks or resource stocks, which are different types of valuations than a dividend stock, they can contact us for some paid consulting work.
All right, and go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com, sign up for the newsletter, and I think you're right, Jason, this thing's going to work its way out probably sooner than anybody out there thinks, because these types of situations can only go on for so long, and then something happens invariably. We'll talk to you again soon, Jason. You be well.
Thanks, Gary, and hopefully I'll be back on soon.
Hi, this is Kerry Lutz of the Financial Survival Network. These are trying times. The most important issue you face today is how to stay free in a world that's becoming less free by the day. Join myself, Mickey Fulp, Robert Ian, David Morgan, and 12 others at the Liberty Mastermind Symposium in Dallas on June 28th, 29th, and learn how to create your personal roadmap to staying free. Don't miss it. Join us and register now at libertymastermind.us. Sign in at libertymastermind.us.
The Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.